Hello, and welcome to the Grand Cinema Hotel, a podcast hosted by three friends who love cinema. I'm Gus, and I'm joined by my two co-hosts, Nate and Alvaro. Tonight, you'll be staying in Room 115, Ran, the samurai epic directed by legendary filmmaker Akira Kurosawa. So go ahead, get comfortable, and throw on that Do Not Disturb sign as we take a look into Ran.
What's going on, all you samurai warriors? Thanks for checking back in the Grand Cinema Hotel. We're back and we are ecstatic. We're doing something a little bit different this week, as we'll probably be doing, a good bit throughout the rest of the year. We're going back in time. We are doing and reviewing old movies. So instead of, kind of just giving ourselves something easy, a little softball toss, we decided to go ahead and tackle one of the most impressive films of all time. So, yeah, here we go.
All right, hey guys, Gus here. The first time I saw this movie, Ran, let's just get that out of the way, right? Ran. I'm not really sure. I've heard it multiple ways. This is, like you said, one of the most impressive movies of all time. It was the film that I would see on the internet that I was like, I have to check this out. Like, who made this? What's it called? It was my intro to Kurosawa. I was like, okay, I'm going to start with this one, and then I'm going to watch a few other ones. I really haven't seen that many of his movies, but based off of what I've seen, and I know this isn't a hot take or anything. It's like, but this is one of the greatest This is one of the greatest filmmakers of all time.
Of all time.
Yeah, and I know you guys both saw this movie recently for the first time, so if you guys want to go in on that experience. Yeah, Ro, what did you think watching Ran the first time?
I had to, it was in film class 7 years ago, I think now. We did a whole chapter on Kurosawa, so I remember that's when I first watched Rashomon, which I think for me, I would have to obviously go through all of them, but I think that's one of my favorite ones. Maybe it's just because it's the first one that I saw.
Yeah.
But as we were doing all that chapter on him, we ran through Ran and High and Low and Yojimbo. So I had seen clips of this movie, like 20 minutes of like each of the movie. And for this one, we had seen the war scene. And it was just in terms of like the grandness of this is almost unequivocal to very many other things, And so watching it, I guess fully for the last week, my screen wasn't big enough, what I like. And then, I do wish I could see this in IMAX,
Yeah, or whatever the equivalent would be.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever the print is, I don't even know if it's 35 millimeter, but this is such a grand show that's put on here. It's such a flex of like superiority of a director that you can't compare it to very many other things. And I think
no, you definitely can't.
It's like even now it's playing in the background, like every single frame you could put in a museum. I think the colors, we're going to get more into it, but
Nate, you want to give your thoughts about the first time you saw this movie?
Yeah, I watched this movie like a week ago. I have seen some of Kurosawa's other works. This was my first introduction to his color movies, so that was a spectacle in itself.
Yeah,
that's the most color, right?
Like the most beautiful movie ever made, potentially. I knew going into this that this was going to be, a film on a whole nother level, I guess. But even just thinking about it now, like it really is. It's a feat. It's impressive. And then diving into the research and learning about Kurosawa's life at this point in time, so fascinating.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
I know we're gonna get into that, but I'm impressed, speechless. Really.
That was a good point. I think that you talked about because I had seen Rashomon and High and Low before this, and those are both in black and white, and so to see this in color, it was the first introduction to it. Like, oh my god!
It's just to have a filmmaker that's majority of his work is in black and white, and then to transition to the color in the later part of his life and career, it's just crazy. It's almost like you've been hiding this from me the whole time. You know what I mean?
And this movie had a lot of trouble getting backed and financed,
which is crazy.
Yeah. So it was a co-production between a French and Japanese production companies, and then they were also able to get backing from Fox. Not a lot, but for the American release of it and stuff like that. Yeah, and it's because George Lucas and Francis Ford Coppola at the time had you know, they had relationships with Fox, obviously George Lucas through Star Wars. They really pushed for this to get made, and like having Kurosawa like be back in the limelight, because at this point in his career, he was like, it sounds dumb to say, but like he was considered like in his flop era. You know what I mean?
He was almost outcasted.
Yeah, exactly. Like from being like one of the like the top 5 Japanese directors of all time, as I've seen him be called in many different articles and videos, but he's one of the like the old masters of film. And then for him to go through this, it's so similar to like what we see now with like Martin Scorsese having trouble getting movies made, or even
Spielberg.
Yeah, like Steven Spielberg made a movie that no one cared about. That isn't.
It's crazy.
That's wild, right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I've heard really good things about West Side Story. I just haven't seen it because I'm not generally that into musicals. But we have Steven Spielberg still, like, what people are arguing is like making the best movie of like the past 10 years or 15 years that he's made, and nobody cares. Yeah,
nobody's talking
it just
about
goes
it.
to show you like that maybe Quentin Tarantino does have a point when he's like, this isn't an old man's game anymore. Like, no one really cares what older directors are saying. And then for Kurosawa to just give like what is considered his late life masterpiece, that's just really
it's
fucking
almost
cool.
like, yeah, like respect has gone away from some of the older directors. That's crazy. Like, it really is.
We do see that, actually. It's a great point, just with a bunch of older. I mean, we're getting
Ridley
that from
Scott.
Ridley Scott,
Yeah.
and John Carpenter, right? And just same thing. Like, they just don't care just because they feel like, okay, you guys don't want to hear it, then I'm not gonna make anything as good anymore. I'm not really gonna put that much effort anymore. And I'm sure Kurosawa felt the same way and was like, let me show you guys what's up with this.
I really want to talk about how, like, because this movie, the scope of this movie is wild. Like, it really is a true epic. And I don't think that would have happened if not, like, the amount of time it took Kurosawa to, like, put together this story and accumulate, like, this idea as a whole and turn it into this movie. I mean, what, 10 plus years, right?
Yeah.
Through countless, like,
Started developing it in the 70s.
Right.
And it didn't release to 85.
Yeah, he like painted every single scene over like these 10 years and storyboarded it like that. Like, that is insane. Like, you don't get that kind of craft and attention to detail. And like,
I'm glad you brought that up about the storyboards and like the paintings, because this is a term that's thrown around, and it's not usually thrown around lightly, but they'll say like a filmmaker is painterly, right?
Yeah.
And like a modern example of that would be somebody like Wes Anderson,
For sure.
right? Say what you will about his movies, but the way they look like they're straight out of children's
They can be
books
framed,
or
yeah.
illustrations, and they're so perfectly framed. But Akira Kurosawa literally was a painter. Like, he grew up as a painter, and then he transitioned to a filmmaker because he's like, I want to, convey these ideas and messages in a different art form. But this movie, like you said, like Rose said, like, you could pause it at any part of the movie and you've got a perfect painting right in front of you.
really though.
Yeah, it's just such a beautiful movie. Like, the first time I seen it, I was literally in awe within like 2 minutes of it starting. I was just like, what the hell?
Yeah. It's
Like,
crazy.
yeah.
And I really feel like all that just goes to show you like how far patience can take you as a creator and an artist. Like, because I feel like nowadays you get these movies that are just kind of churned and pumped out now, like back to back to back. And they do feel kind of like cookie cutter. Whereas you have this, or a man put, like, I know you probably were going to say something about it, but like he kind of thought of himself as like the main guy in this. And this movie it deals with like depression and like loneliness and things like that. And to be able to like put all of that, like, oh, it's just so, it's crazy. You know
Another
what I mean?
point would be like the world changing around you, like how fast it can just turn on you, and then
And just leave you alone.
yeah.
Yeah.
I was telling you guys, if I had to like describe this movie in like a couple of words, it would just be karma coming back to get you.
For
like,
real.
this movie is literally that. Like, it's just what happens like when you're a certain type of guy, and then, well, a certain type of warlord, how things can just change like in an instant. Like, we were just discussing right before the pod, like, how long do you think this movie takes place over? Like 1 day, 2 days, like a week, a month, like it feels like it happens so fast. It's such a downward spiral.
Because I know, like, it really feels like it is like maybe like 3 or 4 days.
I like that 3 or 4 days makes sense.
And
It does,
you
yeah.
really go from top of the world to absolutely nothing almost.
I think a big point that I wanted to bring up at this point in the podcast was that obviously you guys have heard the intro, we used the war song, but that scene specifically, like, there's war going on and we don't get dialogue for maybe like 15 minutes, 10 minutes at least, right?
Well, I broke it down because last night I watched half the movie, like literally half of it, and I was like, okay, and I'm gonna watch the other half of it in the morning. And I really wanted to like track the war scene, and it starts 1 hour in, right? It's the scene is like called, it's like the assault on like the third castle, right?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that's how you would really like describe it. But
the massacre.
yeah, dude, that's more like it, honestly. It starts at like the 1 hour mark, and then like you said, it's like 15 minutes, but it's like the first 7 minutes is all music, no dialogue, no sound, even just music. And then like after the 7 to like 10 minute mark, it's all just like the sound of war and like still no talking, no dialogue. And it's just, we watched this scene right now, like right before we dove in, and it's one of the best fucking scenes.
My jaw was wide open again.
And I think that's what I was gonna say, is that you have this scene that's probably the best war scene, arguably some of the best war scenes that's ever been captured on film. But there's so much emotion in our main character. Like, we're also being thrown into like where the filmmaking aspect comes of him being a director. We have this so much emotion being shown through a guy who's doing nothing. He says nothing, and we're watching a foreign film. So even if he did say something, we have to read the subtitles.
Yeah.
And so, but there's so much going on that we're watching this spiral, this downfall, just in him, in his face. And it's such a critical scene that's a bunch of people are dying. And I just think that juxtaposes how good of a filmmaker Akira Kurosawa is, that you could put such an intimate thing in such of like action-driven scene.
Yeah,
that's a good
exactly. That is a really good point. The dude ages like 50 years in like,
Like
8
a
minutes.
couple minutes.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
It's absolutely
Like,
insane.
I was telling you guys right now when we watched it, I was like, from this point in the movie, this has gone from a man to a ghost.
Yeah.
Like, he's basically a ghost for the whole rest of this movie.
He's completely shattered and broken.
Yeah.
He's empty. Like, oh my God.
Let's do the synopsis, and then we can start really diving
Yeah.
into the movie. Spoilers. It's
I
come
mean,
on,
dude,
it's like
I
almost
mean,
40 years old,
yeah,
right?
like,
Like if you want to
spoilers
see this
are-
movie, go see this movie and come back and watch the episode. But I don't really have any qualms about
I don't
talking about a
either.
40-year-old.
Like, if you click this episode, I'm pretty sure either you've seen it or you probably don't.
yeah, or you don't care.
Care
Maybe
about
you're
it,
gonna
yeah.
watch it after you hear us
yeah.
talk about it, which hopefully you do, because that's one thing I like really want to do with the podcast is like, maybe it doesn't seem interesting, but if you hear how much the three of us love something, you'd be willing to take our opinion and go see the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to love it as much as we do, but like with this one specifically, I think you will,
This
even
one
if this
is
is not
just-
your bag.
Yeah, like this one's got everything, dude.
I think that feeling comes from like all three of us. You'll talk to somebody and they might have seen one of the movies that we saw this year, and they'll be like, "I really like that, but I can't find other movies that are like that." You know, then
Yeah.
you'll be like, "Well, let me show you this whole like, oh, do you like slow movies? Like, I'll shoot you slow movies. Let's see how much you like slow movies. Oh, you like really action movies? Like, so this film is like, you like war movies? Like, let me show you. Like, let me shout out one of the greatest war movies of all time."
I think a point we had brought up last week was that even if this isn't really your something you would go in for, that the movie is entertaining enough on a technical level to make it worth watching.
It really is just such a spectacle. Like one of the parts that I really do like about this movie that I noticed is like, I mean, we've talked about obviously like most of this movie is driven from his paintings and his storyboards. Every shot, like the depth in this movie is so strange.
Depth, yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? It's almost like this movie doesn't have depth. Like it is like a painting, like where it really just is in front of you. And like, it's just so impressive. Like this movie, like you said, technically it has something for everybody.
Yeah,
Like,
it really does.
It really does.
Okay, so let's get to the synopsis. In medieval Japan, an elderly warlord retires, handing over his empire to his 3 sons. However, he vastly underestimates how the newfound power will corrupt them and cause them to turn on each other and him.
Crazy.
Yeah.
This movie is basically like maybe you shouldn't follow your dreams.
Yeah, I know you said that when we were watching it. Definitely. It is amazing that one bad dream could ruin your entire
Yeah.
life. It's kind of like the most simple message of the movie. But another thing we should probably bring up before we really get into it is that this movie is heavily inspired by King Lear.
King Lear,
Definitely,
Shakespeare.
Yeah. One thing I had learned about this movie is that it's not directly an adaptation of King Lear. It's based on an actual story of a samurai warlord who had 3 like crazy loyal sons who were down for him. But then Akira Kurosawa was reading the story and he just thought, well, what if they weren't down
Yeah, what
for
if they
him?
were dicks?
Yeah, and it wasn't until after the first draft of writing the movie that he realized that this is so similar to King Lear that I can start taking stuff from that and adding it to my story and giving it even more depth.
That's cool. It's basically like a sip combination between Shakespeare and actual feudal Japan. Like, it's badass.
Yeah, I don't remember if I brought it up last week, so sorry if you already heard this, but there's this fucking meme that I absolutely love of it's the scene from the new Suicide Squad movie where Idris Elba and John Cena are being introduced to each other, and Idris Elba's like, "This guy does what I do," and then John Cena's like, "Yeah, but I do it better." And it's like Akira Kurosawa to William Shakespeare.
Yeah, because this was what, his third Shakespeare adaptation, basically.
Yeah, it was. So you have Throne of Blood, which is based off of Macbeth. There's a second one that is like very similar to Hamlet. Do you guys have that down?
Was that?
It's called The Bad Sleep Well from 1960.
Okay,
and it's like a Hamlet story. So yeah, this is his third time grappling with the Shakespeare material. But this one is you could argue is like the least of an adaptation because he doesn't borrow any of the language because of he makes it, he can like, however it's got to sound for Japanese.
Yeah, the time period.
And then like with what we're reading is not obviously that's one of the downsides, I guess, of foreign films. Like you never know if you're getting a direct translation.
Right.
But
the language in this film, though, is beautiful.
Yeah,
like,
it's very Shakespearean.
It's very elegant and like court-like, I guess you could say. So I enjoyed that.
What I was going to say is I've always had this, I guess, question. It's like Shakespeare, when he's writing this stuff, is what era are we in? Is it knights?
Shakespeare's like,
it's the Middle Ages, so yeah, or like the Dark Ages,
like
or whatever.
So
like when we talk
during
about like
the plague as well. So
like,
yeah, there's
like,
knights.
We talk about like kings, like knights, right? But I was
kings, queens, knights, lords.
Because my point is saying
serfs.
like the only thing that's cooler than like knights is samurais, like or equally as cool, whatever route you want to go. I don't want to like, but equally as cool. Be like, well, and I think that's why this movie works so well. Be like, take knight aspects from Shakespearean or whatever it is. That's why I had the question, because I'm not sure if it's like what it's supposed to be for Shakespeare tales, but and then add it to samurai, something that's already really, really cool on its own. And oh my God.
Like, I get what you're saying. It's like soldiers, knights, samurais. Like, you have different categories of warrior to put them in, and like Akira Kurosawa's choice is samurais because it's Japanese, obviously, and it's like I told you guys on the last episode, like if it's samurais, I'm like, this is automatically cooler.
It's just so funny because you have Kurosawa takes from Shakespeare, and then you have people like Sergio Leone taking from Kurosawa to make their own westerns. Like it really is this cool
directors that
bag.
Most people would know, like Steven Spielberg and Coppola and Martin Scorsese and everybody knows George Lucas. Come on, it's like one of the most famous guys that's ever lived.
You never seen American Graffiti?
Their master is Akira Kurosawa. So, and Akira Kurosawa was influenced by like Frank Capra and John Ford and like John Huston. So it's like this just beautiful cycle of movies.
Yeah,
like just it's like a melting pot, of like all this cool shit.
It's a crazy little grab bag. Like you know what I mean?
The influence of Kurosawa on like the movies that we love and like most movie lovers love. Most of it comes from him. Like I had just made the point that like, how Dune inspired Star Wars and then Star Wars inspires so much else. Well, Kurosawa is Dune, like in this analogy.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
It's true.
Shout out Dune. Can't wait to talk about
that. That was one of the things when I researched Kurosawa a couple of years ago, why I think I still really like Rashomon is because that's the introduction of nonlinear storytelling. I don't know if it's the first, obviously.
It's what popularized it though.
But it's like Quentin Tarantino took that and like was like that's his basis for almost all of the. And I was going through Quentin Tarantino's movies and like I almost think I love almost all of them, and that's one of the biggest things that he took from that movie. Constantly like, and people were thrown like just crazy when Pulp Fiction came out, and that was like the thing, and to think that Kurosawa did that 45 50 years ago,
getting close to 100 years ago, right? Because isn't Rashomon from like the 30s or 40s?
40s.
Okay, yeah. So in 20 years, it'll be 100 years ago.
Fucking years, yeah.
Yeah, dude.
Jesus,
and his influence is still ringing today.
And
like,
it's still better than most things that come out nowadays.
Yeah, like
exactly.
The smooth brain discourse is to compare The Last Duel and Rashomon to each other, right? But still to this day, 80 years later or close to it, we're still talking about how Akira Kurosawa's influence. So it's like whether you even realize it or not, it's still being force fed to you through like other people. Like it's like osmosis, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you're just getting it without even knowing it. Oh man. You guys want to start like diving into the movie?
Yeah, let's get it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
Man, the beginning of this movie, like the opening scenes, like really just kind of set the tone, I guess. Like how big the world felt. Like, it basically opens up with these samurai that are sitting on top of like these grassy mountains, not moving. Like, it literally looks like a picture.
Yeah.
And it really just it just got me like, okay, like this is gonna be something different.
Oh well, it actually, you know what? It actually starts with the hunt. They're hunting the boars, right?
Well, it starts with the people in the mountains, and then it goes into the people.
Yeah,
with the
I know
boars,
what you're
know
talking
what I
about. Like
mean?
the opening
like
credits
it's literally
are completely
just
still.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's cool, and that's such an old touch too, right? To have like the credits in the beginning like that.
Yep.
But yeah, and then it starts with the hunting of the boar, and that's where we get our introduction to Lord Hidetori Ichimonji, I believe is his name. That little character beat on its own, that he kills the boar, is like, it just lets you know right away, like, okay, this is some old crazy war fucker. You know what I mean?
He's about it.
Yeah. And
we get an introduction to his sons.
Yes.
He has 3 sons. Yes. They are Taro, Jiro, and Saburo, right?
Yeah.
In that order in terms of
age.
Yeah. And they're basically having a hunt, and they are entertaining 2 other lesser powerful men in the area, I'm guessing. Yeah. And they're trying to sell off their daughters to one of them, basically. So it kind of starts with that.
And the 2 other warlords are here to try to reaffirm their friendship. It's,
right.
You know, it's just dudes.
Yeah,
it's bros
business.
vibing out, bonding.
You know what I mean? It's a business meeting.
Hunting a boar.
Which at this point already, we get this colorful, like every brother has a different color. Right?
Drippy.
We have the gold and the red and the blue, and
just bouncing off a full green lush of Japan. So it's already visually 5 minutes in, this already looks better than 90% of the movies that you
I was definitely like, wow.
You know how you always see a good black and white movie, and you're like, man, black and white is so good, and then you see something like Ron, and you're like, never mind. I don't
That's what I'm saying. Like, you hit this for me for 40 years.
So it's like you never. This fight will always go back and forth between me. I like, come on, Macbeth. It was like, oh, black and white's so cool.
But then
and then I watched Ron again, and I'm like, never mind. This is better,
Yep.
right? It's a fight that I'll never know which side I'm really going to fall on at the end.
There is no right answer, but
no, there's not. It shouldn't even be a fight. You can appreciate all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. One last thing I wanted to say about the boar, though, is they kill the boar, and then they don't eat it because the main character says that he's like, his skin is like, he's old and his hide is tough and he's rotten already, like it's indigestible, and he's like, just like me.
It's so funny.
So it's a very slow, patient movie, but if you're really sitting there and paying attention, like
the dialogue
there's some
is
good,
quick.
yeah, like. Obviously, the dialogue is great, but there's some just like small little jokes in there for everybody. You're like, that's hilarious.
It is funny.
A couple minutes later, he talks about like, you know, we're gonna get to it right now, but he said like, he's like, life is such for the old, and he like smiles because he thinks he's gonna have this like sick retirement, which is what we're gonna get to right now. Is that on this hunting trip, he basically retires from being the warlord of the area.
He falls asleep and has a dream and wakes up, and when he wakes up from this dream, he's ready to basically pass the reins on.
He had the worst nightmare of his life, and he talks about being alone in the world, which is heavily foreshadowing how this movie's going to go.
Yeah.
I think by this point, when he's already talking about that, has he already gone off on his, like, I guess disposition is what I would call it, about talking about what he's done to take that role, like, which he's like, I've killed many people, many wars, and I forgot, obviously.
This
exactly
dream, totally changes his way of thinking and how he came to power. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because he comes off like, I always think this is so interesting about samurai culture in general, is that like they come across very regal, like, right? And very, a lot of like etiquette and just like, you know, like in the opening scene, like you see like all these individual teapots and all this like cutlery for them. Like every samurai is like dressed to the nines with like their specific uniform. Like you have these cool banners and everything, right? Their helmets, just all these beautiful details. And then you're like, so quickly they're gonna chop your head off.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like it's like, not to make a pun here, but it's like a high and low. You know what I mean? Of like, wow, like it's so beautiful, but shit can turn sideways so fast.
Strictly
like
the power. It's just
just
power.
because of the power. You know what I mean? Like we all know power corrupts. That's not a theme it's not a hard theme to understand.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and we'll talk about how he's given up his reins of power now. Okay, right. And his plan is to leave it to his 3 sons separately. You know, the oldest is going to be in charge of the main tower, so he's going to take over as the warlord. And then his 2 younger sons are to like have the other 2 castles, and you know it will keep their house strong forever because they'll have the most like grip over the area. And we see the two oldest sons who would be considered like the most loyal ones.
They're down.
Yeah, they're well, the first son Taro does say like, "Are you sure? Like, I don't want this to happen." Like, that's how loyal, quote unquote, he is. You know, the middle one is very like, I'm kind of down to see how this goes, and the youngest one is like, "You're an idiot."
Fuck no, like, this is stupid. Like, you really think that this is gonna go over well? And then you get this great little representation, I guess, by Lord Hiditora of how 3 people together are stronger than 1 person together. Do you know what I mean? With the arrows that he does.
Yeah.
I love that scene. But
Which is comedic. I think it's comedic relief at one point. Be like, because,
this is a long scene. This is a
is.
very patient movie, like Nate had brought up. But yeah, you get these little beats for paying attention. Like every time you just think like, okay, this could get a little boring. It's just something really exciting happens. And yeah, like you're talking about with these arrows, it's like they each break 1 arrow, and then they put 3 of them together.
And they're like,
first
"Oh, we
2
can't
sons.
break it." And then it gives the last son. He's like, he tries to break it, can't, and he hits it over his knee, and it snaps. He's like, "You see?" He's like, even when the arrows are sheathed, there's a way to break them.
Yeah, Ro was telling me when we were watching that scene, he was like, "That's such a like anti-movie thing."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the movie any other movie would be like the 3 sons trying and then like realizing that they can't because they need to learn the lesson or whatever.
Yeah.
And this movie kind of snaps you out of a movie and puts you into reality where it's like, there's always a way to break this shit. Snap.
Exactly. And then you really like, at least for me, like you're like, okay, well, what's up with this younger son? Like, why doesn't he want to go and be a part of this family? Like, why is he against his dad? Like, that sounds like a pretty good gig to me, like rule the kingdom with your brothers type thing. But as we see, he had a point, you know.
Yeah,
so.
he ends up being the most loyal son of the 3.
He knows his brothers very well, is what I would say, as he knows that why this isn't going to work. And each one of, like you said, the first one questions like, "Are you sure?" Because it's not like he's sick. It's not like they're anticipating him dying. So they would rather still be under their dad.
Yeah.
And so, like you said, I think maybe only the middle one is the one that's like, okay, like
He's a fence sitter.
yeah. So then it's just funny. Like the third one, I think that's why maybe he knew, be like, we'll get to that when we get to that, when he automatic, or maybe he'll die and we'll have to figure that out.
And I think it's a great, like, because we were watching this earlier right before we started the pod, and during this scene, the younger son basically says, he's like, "Do you not know in like the climate that we live in? Like, this is like full of power and like murder, and like you really think that this is just gonna work because you say it's going to?"
Yeah.
Like, so it's just great foreshadowing.
He makes
honestly.
a great point in that like, he's like, the people that you've trusted the most have always been the people that come and try to take what you have. And he's like, so why do you think that they're not gonna do it? Like, are you a fool to life? Like, you're this old and you still haven't learned who's gonna backstab you?
Yeah, the youngest one seems to have the like tightest grip on reality out of the 3.
He can see the bigger picture, I guess.
Which is it's an interesting character beat because he's like, he comes off as such an asshole.
He seems like such a dick.
Yeah.
And it's great because you have the Emperor Lord's advisor, Tongo.
That's what I was-
who
yeah,
I really
yeah.
like that character as well.
loyal to the soil.
He's so down for this Lord, like he really is. But after the youngest son says this, the king basically says, "I'm gonna banish you," kind of thing.
Yeah.
And he's like, "You're fucking gone. I sever all ties between us. Go." And Tongo basically gets on his knees and he says, "Please listen to him." He's like, he may sound disrespectful or foolish or whatever, but what he says has weight. And then the Lord basically says, "Fuck you, you're gone too." So
Yeah, and that scene, that small part of the scene is the example of what I mean. Like, he tells Tongo that he's like banished, and he also tells Sabaru like, "You're a stranger to me. I cut all, like he said, I cut all ties with you," which I thought was like, "Ooh, that was cutting deep." And then he attempts to cut Tongo's head off.
He
He's
lights
like,
him up
"Give me
right
my
there."
fucking sword." He's like,
and Tongo's like, "If you have to do it, do it. I will not move it. I have to speak my mind. It's my duty to you." Like, dude,
Yeah,
the honor
it's
in the
so good.
samurai is so
Yeah,
good.
loyalty just
Yeah.
to the max.
And then, like, obviously at this part, like the first time seeing it, you're still kind of like, why are they doing this? And then, yeah, you find out these dudes are the people that were really loyal to this Lord.
And then you have the other aspect of this scene is that the 2 other smaller warlords that you mentioned earlier, it's like Ayabe and Fujimaki, right? They're seeing this go down in front of them, and they came here to kind of like, help keep the bonds tied together, and they're like smiling at each other, kind of like, perfect.
This
like,
shit is splintering.
Yeah,
Like,
oh, perfect, right in front of us. We don't even have to go to war. Like, this is destroying itself.
we can weasel our way in here somehow. Yeah.
Yeah, and the Lord Fujimaki, when Saburo is banished, he offers to take him in. Like, you should marry my daughter. You
yeah.
can be my stepson. Like, you know, you can see the machinations are starting to come
the
into
gears
play.
are turning. Yeah.
I think that's like basing on what you guys are saying is him being, if I pair up with him and he's the one that ends up winning, well, at least I already have my end because his daughter's going to be, my daughter's going to be his wife.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think in that scene, I wanted to bring up too, Saburo, right?
Yeah.
He said something about like, it sucks that I was born after them, like that I have to just follow because I like my brothers are older than
I
me.
think he's like 6 months or something, and like this is like
That's what I wanted
because
to
I'm
bring up.
treated like this because of 6 months or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's true because a lot of that, like, I mean, you really do think about that kind of like the transfer of power based on like age and stuff. Like, what the fuck does that have to do with anything? Like, you know what I mean?
It doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, so it's an interesting.
And that's still a point that, like, not just in samurai culture, like, that's
No.
always been in any type of culture. Like, well, my firstborn will get it. And it's like, what does that have to do with
How does
running
that
it
qualify
well?
you for, you know, a job or whatever you have to do?
You're just older.
So, good point.
Before we move on to the next scene, we're not going to do every single scene.
We'll do,
There's
like
some
chunks of the movie.
Yeah,
or-
big chunks of the movie that are really important. So Lord Hidetora's plan is to split up his kingdom, right? And he's going to spend the rest of his days going from castle to castle, advising them and you know, just living
Just having a
living
good
out
ass
his
time.
days. Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Though he's like, to be old.
Yeah,
Like,
this would be
he's
so much
picturing this
fun.
like this is going to be the perfect way to go out. You
Yeah,
know?
like he's moving to Florida and he'll go visit his kids every once in a while.
He said he's
but-
gonna have his 30 man army still, right? Like his bodyguard and all of
Mm-hmm.
his concubines with him, and he wants to keep his title, or he wants to be like a promotion in title. Like, I'm the great lord now. I'm not just the lord.
The thing that I think is a big mistake on his part is keeping the insignia. Instead of
Yeah.
transferring the insignia to the person who's in power, he kept his own like logo for himself, which makes the kingdom look weak almost.
Yeah, you can't quit your job and then say I'm still in charge.
Yeah, like
And you guys should still ask me for
I
opinions.
quit, but I'm still the boss. It's like, but you're not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
And his biggest mistake, other than, you know, making this decision on a whim, is that he underestimates what happens like when you create a power vacuum,
Mm-hmm.
which is essentially what happens. Is now you got all three brothers out there, you know, plotting and scheming on their own, and then you have the two other warlords.
right. And like,
Yeah.
not only do you have like just the brothers like in their own heads, but you have outside influence from other people that are, you know, close to the brothers that are influencing them further down the line that we see with
Yeah,
like Lady Cade.
Yeah,
you know?
because like each of their armies only support like
That-
the brother. You know what I mean? Like Saburo's army goes with him everywhere. So when he's banished, his entire army is banished. You know, Taro's army is with Taro because he's the lord now. And then like one of the soldiers we see is part of Jiro's army, and his name is like Kagone.
Yeah.
I believe we're gonna get so much of this wrong, but he is a big player in how this movie like really goes down.
I think it's like Kurogane or something
Yeah,
like
Kurogane,
that. Yeah,
probably.
Kurogane.
Yeah. He's a very vital soldier as well.
I like his character a lot in this
Yeah.
movie. He's really good.
There's some shots of him in this movie where he just looks like so powerful. Like,
Yeah.
especially during
Like,
one of
you
the war
don't
scenes.
fuck with him.
He's on the horse. It's like a low angle looking up at him, and like he's like looks all like swollen
It's
shit.
like
You know what
it's
I
almost
mean?
like reminiscent to like the pictures you see of like U.S. presidents, like George Washington crossing the Delaware, like just so prowess, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's like
definitely.
that.
It's just that like that painterly like aspect of the movie where it just looks so good.
It does.
Let's move along to the next scene, which is like the transfer of power. This is where we meet Lady Cade,
Cade.
Kaide.
However you say it.
Yeah. Excuse us for all these
Yeah, I'm
pronunciations
sorry.
today. She plays a very like Lady Macbeth like role, like you had mentioned earlier,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Nate. But she's more down than Lady Macbeth. Like what we've learned about Lady
yeah.
Macbeth last week is that she pussied out at
Lady
the last
Cade's got
second.
some nuts.
Yeah.
And like, I think it's interesting because, I mean, not to get too far ahead, but she is the only person in this movie that accomplishes what she sets out to accomplish. So,
yeah, she's definitely an even stronger character than Lady Macbeth.
Yeah. She's a stronger character than I think than most of the people in this movie too.
Yeah,
Like, you know what I
definitely. That's a good
mean?
point.
That comes from that she's one of the biggest victims of Hidetora's like
Wrath.
wrath of
And
becoming this powerful, or this whole family's wrath of becoming so powerful in the area.
So we can talk about her a little bit before we go any further because her character drives the plot so much. This big first castle, like the main castle, was her father's castle, and Hidetori took it over. And
Like burned
we
down.
said,
some of it,
he's
right?
ruthless. Yeah, he had burned down some of the other castles that we see later on in the film, but he's just like a completely ruthless man. Like he killed her whole family. Later on, we learned that even his second son, Jiro, same thing. His wife fucked up that family as well, and like his daughter-in-laws, they are really the people who have like the most effect on his life. Really, like how they came into his life was not in any way, shape, or form good.
It was not welcoming at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, I'm going to murder your family and take you so you can marry my son.
Yeah, and it really lets you know like that these people have been completely fucked by him.
And that's one of my favorite about this movie is like you do feel so sympathetic for Hidetora, like as he goes through, as you see him kind of lose his power and become this aimless
Dive
wanderer,
into madness.
right? But at the same time, like, how can you feel bad for him? Like, throughout the movie, like, each scene, like, you learn a little bit more about the atrocities that he's committed and how bad of a person he really is. And, like, is he deserving of this? Like, you almost feel like nobody really is. But if there was a person who would be deserving of this kind of late life punishment, it would be this piece of shit warlord.
Because, like Gus said, movie about karma.
Yeah.
To think that we get into his, let's just say 4 days, right, of his downfall. That has to be equal to how ruthless he was
for 40 years or something like that.
Yeah. That's why it came crashing in 4 days.
Yeah.
That hard. It'd be like the hardest you've ever seen anybody have a cynical downfall. Because that's how shitty he was being a lord or trying to be the lord of this huge
he was successful. Like
yes.
But in the ways that he did it, you know, you're going to create enemies.
He's definitely someone who ruled with fear instead of like love.
And that's why it's funny. Like, then you just think of like his retirement. He's like, okay, I'm going to go retire. You guys can rule. But it's like, have you forgot of the past like 50 years of your life?
Everybody forgives me, right? For burning down the castles and all the gouging out of people's eyes and things like that. You know?
Dude, oh my God.
And that's interesting because you're talking about this story is based off of somebody where the brothers did get down and nothing bad really happened. But there was probably more stories like this of lords trying to take the utmost power that they could, and they would just kill anybody that they ran across. And maybe they weren't as successful as the fictional story that we get here, but it's that these characters more than likely existed in history.
For sure.
Hell yeah.
For sure. For sure.
History has some cool stories, but it's got some super dark shit in it that you like, oh
History's
my God. I don't know if I want to like this.
Like they hid the losers in history, and I'm sure the losers did some of the worst shit.
Yeah, you don't want to ask the losers what really happened. So we have this transference of power like we're talking about. It instantly goes sideways.
It's horrible off the bat.
Yeah,
he won't even sit down.
He gives up his power to his son, but he refuses to sit below him.
He was like, I'm not going to sit below you. It's like, bro, you literally just gave up your power to him. Like,
yeah, and they're just kind of like, you know, it starts off like well enough where you're thinking like, okay, Dad, I understand that you're my dad, but I'm also the boss now, so aren't you supposed to respect me? And he's like, well, what the fuck? I'm your dad. Like,
exactly. Yeah. He makes him sign a document saying that he's going to like abide and listen to everything that Taro has to say. And
it's like Taro's his own man. You give him the title of like, this is yours now. Be like, so you're just going to disrespect me though? So everybody just knows that I'm a puppet leader. He has to like draw his lines. Be like, all right.
Yeah. And it's funny that you brought up that puppet line because the jester in this movie, the fool, if you will, yes. Kayome, wonderful performance.
Really good range.
The truth teller of this movie, you know. That's obviously got to be one of the most Shakespearean parts of the movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Just to have a jester who's telling the truth and telling us what's going on.
And everybody loves it.
But
her.
How crazy is it that like that's the one person that Hidetora listens to?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's the one person that he really does just actually listen to.
I have seen that in like watching videos about like the history of jesters and stuff like that, is that they were considered to be people who could speak like the most freely because it was under the veil of it being a joke.
Of comedy.
You know what I mean? And it's like sometimes it was one of the king's like most trusted people who they would talk to and listen to because it was their job to make fun of the truth, you know?
And then, yeah.
Also, you would think so.
You know, like, comedians tell the truth nowadays.
Yeah, like I hired you specifically. You're not even anything to do with my family. Like I hired you, so.
I don't even watch the news. I just listen to comedians. Those are the real truth tellers these days. Oh man.
Oh my God.
I know you guys absolutely love this shot and scene, so I want to let you guys revel in it. Of a certain bow and arrow shot that happens in this movie. Do you guys want to talk about how much you love this scene?
Yeah, I love this scene. Basically, so you have the perfect timing because we were talking about the jester. It's a
trans actor.
Yeah. So
I thought it was a a girl up until you brought it up that it was trans.
Yeah.
Like I just assumed it was a woman. I don't know.
So they were dancing and singing this song that is apparently a total hit with all the soldiers of Hidatora. They're talking shit on Taro as the king, basically. And Taro's bodyguards get pissed and try to jump her or him, and and then all of a sudden just gets hit with an arrow, and it's like, where the fuck did this come from? And this is also the first time that you see blood in this movie, and the blood in this movie is so red.
It's the reddest
paint.
red.
It's it's like straight up like bright red paint, like fire truck paint. It's incredible.
Love it.
It looks so good. But and then you just get this quick pan to the tower, and Hidatora is like
Batman style.
Yeah, his head is like sticking out of the window, and his like his
One of those
brows
evil
are like
looks
scrunched.
you could see in the movie.
And he just basically sniped this dude with an arrow, and these flutes come in the background. It's like, and it's just like, what the fuck? Like,
it's like pure cinema moment.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
it's just so cool.
I think what makes it so why I love this being done in cinema. Obviously, in history, people saw this with their own eyes, right? And they're probably like, you get the corner shot, but in cinema, it's so well done because the zoom is, and then the intro of the score as it comes in, it just so much. What's conveyed here is so much respect. Such a war-hardened veteran taking out with experience, like, do not fuck with my jester.
Yeah.
And within just a 10-second sequence, and all of them. Nobody fucks with her anymore, you know?
Yeah. I told Nate that it looked like a gargoyle. Like,
did.
you know
Yeah,
what I
it
mean?
did.
Like, he looks as
Exactly.
evil as a
Yeah.
giant gargoyle on top of a building. Like, I see you. You know
It's
what
just
I
so
mean?
good. And like, I mean, and the jester could, she was talking shit. Like that
Yeah.
dude had a right to come at him, and then you see how that kind of goes against how Taro's feelings because he just killed one of his guards now. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, and the reason I had brought up this scene, I kind of had gotten off on a tangent about it, was that the line about like the Taro being like a puppet, right? Is what the song is talking about. They're like, oh, he's in the tower,
Yeah.
but he's like a hollow leader. You know what I mean? Like he's just
He's
a
like-
shell for the dad.
he's like swinging from the tree, blown by the wind, like kind of.
yeah, like that's how hollow you
Yeah.
are, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Damn.
Yeah, I'm like, "Ew."
But this is the first time that blood is spilled in this movie, and there's a little tone shift. I feel like.
I think that's backtracking a little bit. Lady Kaede. Yeah, Kaede. I think that's where we get the mention of her bringing up the insignia thing that you guys talked about. Like, your dad took that from you for a reason. He didn't just give it back to you. And I think that's where it becomes obvious to the son that he has to do stuff. Like, I know it's my father, but I also have to set myself up in a way to be respected because look what they think of me.
Just like many other movies, I have to prove myself as a man because I'm a man.
Yeah.
Like that's part of my job.
it comes with respect.
Yeah, it does, and it really. This movie, I told you like it turns on its side so fast. Is that Hidatori had just banished his youngest son, and now within 15 minutes he's been banished from
by
his own
older
castle.
son.
It's like what the fuck?
Karma's a bitch. Yeah.
Yeah, this movie is like call an ambulance, not for me.
That's a perfect way to describe it. Because then after this, then he kind of dips out and he says, well, fuck you, then I'll go to the second castle and see what's up with
Jiro.
Jiro.
It reminds me just like just sorry to cut you off,
you're
but
good.
like how in Nightmare Alley, he just leaves his money with her and he's just met her.
Yeah.
Maybe like this guy's such a brand decision of like, you're my son, so I'm just going to give you this and you're going to treat me right? Like, no. This is medieval Japan, daddy. Like, it's not how it works.
Yeah, daddy.
And I love it because, like, you see him, like, he's like, all right, they start traveling to the second castle, and you see Jiro with his advisor. They're like, fuck this. Like, we don't want him to come here. Like, this is not what we want. This is not going to be good for us. Like, this is not in our best interest. So,
Yeah,
that's what happens next.
Exactly. This is what I was talking about earlier, like that character of Kurogane, like being in Jiro's ear
Yes.
again, like, nah, dog.
Like, this ain't
is
good.
a bad idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Jiro at this point is still trying to be loyal to his brother, right? And he's like, well, this was part of the plan, is that if he is in charge and we have to listen to him, what do you want me to do? You know what I mean? Like, Hidatori did not put his sons in a good position to really be for him or against him. They just have to be. The whole point of his lesson in the beginning was that it's like we're a unit, we're a family. So one decision from the leader means I just have to go with it. And he wasn't expecting it to turn on him like that. But he comes to Jiro's castle and he is like rejected right away. They don't even really let him into the castle.
No. he goes on that's where the scene that he has with Lady Sue, who is Yuro's wife.
Yes.
And you basically find out more of the atrocities that Hidetora has committed. And that scene is awesome, by the way.
It is. It's so gorgeous, right?
Like,
you have this like orange purple sunset, and
like,
you have the natural lighting, and the shots are from low.
Because like that plays back into like what I think is like the patience of this movie. Like not even necessarily like the patience of like the pacing and the reward, but like the patience of Kurosawa as a director to get that sunset, to get that shot. Like who knows how many times they had to do that. And like you said, like they even had like, this is throwing it back, but there's a cloud that resembles like a rabbit. Like,
oh yeah.
How many clouds you looked at to try to get that shot? You know what I mean?
There's a couple of directors only that I've come across lately. The greats. Where I'm like, did you get nature to also be like, I'm acting in this.
Did
too.
you direct nature?
Yeah. Because they're like, how did you? That's a good example.
So,
like,
I need a cloud that looks like a rabbit today. Can you get me a toe by 3 o'clock?
Yeah.
Come on.
So it's just crazy.
The wind's like, come on.
That scene's awesome. But yeah.
Or like the clouds, like, come on, it's Akira Kurosawa.
Dude, do you think that they had some second unit? You know, we talked about this movie taking so long to be made.
Mm-hmm.
Its production started in 1983 and it was released in 85. It's like, imagine like up until that last day, right before they had to turn in like the master version of it, being like, I need a cloud.
I need a cloud. I need one more cloud. That's all I need for this movie.
Just hiring a crew of people to like just constantly photograph the clouds.
It's for seeing the last seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's just so many cool shots. Like you have the shot like during the battle scene of like when it almost looks heavenly.
I was just gonna say,
you know
that.
what I mean? Like, how do you get that fucking shot? Like, they didn't do anything to that. Like, that's a real shot.
That's no CGI.
We're gonna get to that real soon. That
Yeah.
scene in general. So he's been rejected from Jiro's castle. He's completely insulted. I may be losing track of the scene, like the order of it, but like you said, he talks to Lady Sue or Lady Sue, however you would say that. And she has also felt the wrath of Hidetori.
She's like the opposite of Lady Kaede. Yeah.
So Lady Sue is very much into like the forgiveness and like religion.
Buddha.
She's deep dived into religion now. You know what I mean? So she's very forgiving of Hidetora, and Hidetora tells her like, he's like, don't look at me like that.
Yeah.
Don't talk to me like that. Like you should hate me basically as much as I hate myself.
He doesn't want her to be sad. Like that breaks him. He wants her to be hateful.
Like he is. You know what I mean? Because if this, we don't know much about his backstory, but say like this had happened to his family, you know?
Yeah.
Like he obviously responded with rage and like his wrath. But this wife has taken this a lot more gracefully
She's
than
almost
anybody
like
should.
repented and been humbled by it.
And once you find out what happens to her brother as well,
dude.
it makes it even harder
That's Michael
to understand.
Jackson, bro.
Yeah, I know you said he reminded you of Michael Jackson.
bro.
Flute Boy? Nice song, Flute Boy.
Oh, God, dude. He's left hanging.
Yeah, so this is going to take us to the most phenomenal scene in this whole movie.
In the world
In
ever.
maybe all of
period.
Yeah.
In the world, period.
Because Hidetora, he dips the fuck out of the second castle because he's not wanted there. He's rejected by Yuro, so he goes, all right, I'll go to the third castle and see what's going on over
And
there.
Saburo's men leave the castle.
So they approach the castle, and he has like his 30 dudes and the jester, and he actually waits out in the desert, and Tongo
does wait out
gets him.
yeah.
Tongo basically kind of meets up with them, and then they go to that castle. But yeah, and then they get there, and Sanjuro's army is there, and they basically are like.
Said Sanjuro.
Sanjuro. That's
Think about another movie.
Yeah, really good movie.
I got Kurosawa on the brain.
Pivot, we're doing that now. No.
Actually,
Sanjuro.
But yeah, his army basically, they're chilling at the castle. They're like, we have no need to stay here. You guys can have it. We're going to go meet up with Saburo. So they take the castle, and then, yeah.
this leads to one of the most satisfying first hour of a movie maybe ever.
Talk about a payoff. I don't even like, it is a payoff, but like this first hour is so good on its own. Like,
Yeah, definitely.
you know what I mean?
But if you're not down for the movie at this point, this is like your satisfaction for waiting
Like,
that long.
hits you
know
with the
what I
defibrillator. Like, clear.
I think most people, that's how it works for them, right? Unless you really do like slow dragging movies, which obviously most people do not. Because so we just got to keep it real in terms of if you're into stuff like this and you're waiting for that payoff, this is the payoff.
I think one of us may receive a text this week talking about someone who watched this movie and is going to go, you know, I thought the first half was kind of boring, and then I thought it really picked up after that. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's something we might hear from if one of our listeners happens to let us know that they watched the movie. I have faith that they won't feel that way because it's so good.
I think
but
so too.
I could see it. You know what I mean? And
it makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. But yeah, this payoff for this scene,
bro.
and
you've seen this scene if you were anywhere on the internet looking at movies. You know what I mean?
It's also it starts off with him coming to the realization what's going on.
He wakes up from another dream too.
Yeah.
He's asleep when it happens. He wakes up. That's a big part of this, like waking up and being like, "Fuck!"
The transition between dream and reality.
Because I really like about when he's finding out for himself as we are being revealed that we just look through one window. And he's like, "Okay, that's like they're setting up for battle," you know? Like,
hey, there's an army out there.
And then he goes, "Oh, that's my other son." Like,
Takes the other window.
He's like, "What?" He's like, "What did I do?"
Yeah,
and then in a day, or like we're talking about, if this takes 4 days, within a day, everything has gone to shit already.
This dude is fucked. Like, he realized he's like, I'm fucked.
Yeah, that scene, dude, with the windows or that shot. I told you guys, I was like, what was he expecting? Like, I'm gonna look out the other window and not see anything and be like, okay, I can handle one army.
It's like just it's like a banner. Like, just kidding. Like, like no, dude. Like, no.
Yeah.
Oh fuck.
So then, you have the combination of Taro and Euro's armies come and storm this third castle.
Yes.
And start
the ambush begins.
Yeah, the massacre at the third castle. They just start wiping everybody out. Like, it is brutal, and the choreography of this scene is off the chain. Like, I've never seen anything quite like it.
A man gets trampled by horses.
It's like on par with, like, you know, like the Battle of Helm's Deep or like something like that. Like, it really is a spectacle to behold. And like we talked about earlier, the use of no background noise and solely just like the score.
Yeah.
Transitioning into no score and only battle sounds. Like, it's incredible.
To be able to want to handle so many extras for such a scene that's very pivotal to the movie, which is not easy. Like you said, it's a whole second unit. You had brought up there's
3 cameras. They usually film with 3 cameras. One long lens, a static one. Kurosawa used to like the idea of the scene being static and then the action coming through the sides of the frame.
It's cool.
So one example of that we see in this scene is Lord Hidetori aging about 50 years in a couple minutes, right? This is what we talk about, like him becoming a ghost, right? He's sitting there completely still. His eyes are like looking like Tom and Jerry, like a cartoon cat.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Perfect
like
analysis.
it's so the look of shock on his face is like one you've never seen before. But then flaming arrows are coming flying behind him.
Bullets are whizzing by his head, and like people are just getting murdered. Like he's watched his harem like perform seppuku on themselves.
Yeah,
he's watching everybody.
Goodbye to his ladies.
All of his soldiers, like, you know, taking bullets. They're all screaming farewell to him. Like, it is true hell on earth.
One of his soldiers is telling him, like, we've been ambushed.
Yeah.
They're here. And he's like, well, go get them. Like, you know what I mean? The guy's got like 4 arrows in his back. And he's like, well, go warn everybody else.
Yeah,
you
he's
know
like,
what I
I'm
mean?
dead, dude.
Yeah, and then he falls down and instantly dies.
It's crazy. I found when doing some research that he used about 1,400 extras and a couple hundred horses.
Yeah, I saw like 200 horses or something.
Yeah, 200 horses. And it was reported at the time of filming, like once stuff had kind of come out, that the Japanese news circuit was reporting that he had used thousands of horses and thousands of extras just because of like the scope and everything that people saw. They couldn't believe that it was so few.
It feels like 1,000 horses and 1,000
That's
soldiers.
like, that just goes like the choreography that he's able to accomplish, and just him as a director.
It's so good.
It's so impressive.
You know, like we brought up The Last Duel, and I feel like maybe The Last Duel and maybe something else like Dune would have been the movies this year where it's like the scale being so massive, and then The Last Duel having so many real extras on. I'm sure we probably talked about it. I can't even remember because the episode was so long ago that like some of those extras may have been CGI, but there's just something about when you're seeing those real people running, like, and you can feel it. You know what I mean? Like the sound alone is just different of all those like boots stomping on the ground.
Yeah, and
like,
all the dust that gets kicked up. You know what I mean? Like,
I know you have some stuff about this that it was filmed on Mount Fuji. Right?
Yeah, this was actually, they built this castle. Like, I know some of the other castles, they had to use miniatures and stuff, but this castle they built on the side of Mount Fuji. They burned this thing down, like, full scale. Like, it's just, that's fucking awesome. Like, imagine being there.
Unless I'm stupid, Mount Fuji is a volcano, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so this movie's filmed on the side of an active volcano. You got a samurai bloodbath on the side of a volcano.
And,
bro.
like, this is not, like, a very, like, clean war scene or anything. Like, there's blood pouring from every angle of this scene, and you have horses that are falling over and people actually being trampled and or looks like it. Like it's just crazy.
Fire everywhere.
Yeah.
Like
The place is literally burning down.
I think one of the coolest things that we see is like the blood again. We get this really bright red blood, but the fact that there's so much of it, and like somebody will die like at the top floor, and there's just blood dripping.
Yeah.
And just
not even dripping like a faucet.
Yeah, like a hose, like a fire hose.
Those little details like that, I think, are stuff that another director might approach this and just do differently, and it just doesn't work the same way. Kurosawa knows to like when to go extra, when to pull back, when to be subtle, when to pull or like full pedal to the metal.
Yeah, a good example or good point. I think that this scene is an example of like the paying off the patience of it, and it's like. Some other directors, I've already brought this up before in a different episode, but some directors don't reward you for having the patience to watch this movie. It's trying to challenge you, right?
Exactly.
And this one very much is thinking about the audience. Like, okay, they sat through the first hour, we built up the story, and now let's just give them the most exciting thing.
Drop a nuke.
See. Yeah,
just drop a fucking nuke. Like,
yikes.
no, I didn't mean that.
Yeah, it's just funny that you say that of all things because Akira Kurosawa lived through that, and he also thought the U.S. should be indicted for the firebombing of Tokyo.
Well, they probably should, but honestly.
So, hey, I guess we didn't exactly mean that.
Nuke.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And speaking of the guns in this scene, because that's like one of the first things you see is Akira Kurosawa had thought of these guns as a representation of nuclear warfare. Like this was the first time that there was now
guns,
like mass destruction.
I'm on
like,
par.
Yeah.
I'm on par.
It was just it was an off-color joke. But yeah, that the guns are like the first mass destruction Japan really felt, and like now unskilled people were able to kill very skilled warriors. Yep. You know, if you're an archer, that's the most skilled position in the military at that time. You got to be precise to hit somebody.
Right.
And now you can just snipe a warlord from 20 feet away, 50 feet away, or whatever. And we see this happen to Lord Taro.
Mm-hmm. Man goes down.
Yeah, yeah.
Man, dude, that came out of nowhere. I was like, holy shit.
And
casualties of war.
Yeah. Or Kurogane, who we're going to continue to bring up because this guy is a player in this movie. He's very active with how the story goes down. He tells Jiro that he's like, your brother's been shot, and you know this is what happens in war. He's holding the gun, and he's like, hey, the fortunes of war, right? He's like, the fates were more in your favor, and he drops his gun because it's very obvious that he just killed Taro.
Him, yeah.
It's just that's so good. That just to be able to conclude a scene that way, you know, and like you said, I think that might have to do with just the hierarchy of Japanese, like. I think the general always ends up being like if the leader dies, generals step up and they become like the heads of these like clans, I guess. And I think that's why like we get a sense that he would be a great leader himself if he got the chance to.
He's ruthless. He's got the ruthlessness down. So
and how does Jiro react? Is he pissed? Is he upset?
Nope.
He's kind of indifferent.
Right in the middle.
He's like, all right, I'm kind of with this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's
that
like,
would mean I'm in charge, doesn't it?
And not too mad about that. Yeah. So you just see like how this power starts to corrupt him even more.
And then we get, which I know you really love, is the scenes where we get Hidetora walking down. Because everybody thinks he's going to kill himself, right? They even say it like he's going to commit. What's the word?
Seppuku.
Seppuku. He's going to, like, they just assume. And you get the two armies just waiting there.
They're waiting at the bottom of the stairs, and he just comes out looking like
he emerges from hell.
Like like looking like a ghost, like he's a dead man walking.
One of the best scenes ever.
Yeah,
a burning castle, and it's like centered. And everything is centered in this scene, half red, half yellow.
Perfect painting of a picture.
Yep.
And I love it because you have Taro in yellow, and you have Jiro's men in red, and Taro's the sun and Jiro's the moon.
Yeah,
and you have because in Hidetora was the sun and the moon, so you can see that they split. And then after the sun goes down, who gets murdered? The dude that is the sun. Like, it's just so fucking symbolic. Yeah. Like, everything is so, like, it's so good.
Before we forget, because you had already brought this up, and I wanted you to get this point across, was that you were talking about, like, the way nature looks, like directing nature, right? And we saw the the cloud that looks like a rabbit. And then, like you said, during this scene, it's like the heavens opening up to watch like these lords go to war.
This bloodshed.
And then it's got a very like a 2001 feel to it, like the very beginning of 2001, where like the sun and the sun just feels like an alien entity watching over them, right? And like this movie felt very similar. Like it felt very similar in that scene
because it's almost like you're not on Earth anymore.
Yeah, and like when the music is hitting, like it's so like haunted and like ghostly.
The flutes are like it's not. I mean, the music is good, but it's not positive. It's not upbeat. It's no, scary.
Definitely not.
That scene, it's funny that you guys bring that up, is that scene I think ties to a line that later towards the end of the movie that like in the review that I wrote when I first saw this movie, that was the quote that I decided to use. I don't know if I should bring it up now or later, but I think I just wanted to bring up the point that this specifically I think gets addressed later. And it's crazy that you guys even visually saw that from the scene, you know? And I just think, again, proves how good of a director Akira Kurosawa is.
Yeah, definitely. Before we move off this scene, I wanted to bring up that the scene, or Hidatora leaving the castle and walking out of the gates was all one take. They had to get it right.
So cool, dude.
Yeah.
That's a lot of pressure.
That's awesome.
With the shit burning down in the background, that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, definitely.
Nailed it.
So we'll move off of that scene. He's been banished now. He's completely abandoned in the world. His dream has come true of him being alone in the world.
There's the foreshadowing for you.
Only the jester, and this is where I think it's funny. I forgot to bring up that I like the analogy that you made of how loyal that guy is. It's like Dwight in The Office to Mike.
Oh, yeah. So Tongo, even though he's been banished, has been following the Lord, which we learned a little earlier when he's telling them to go to Saburo's castle. I had made the analogy of like that episode of The Office where Michael Scott's like trying to be Survivor Man, and Dwight is watching him the entire time. Like, I will not let anything happen to him. Breakfast, breakfast. The 2 little eggs, or lunch or something like that. But that definitely reminded me of that when I saw it. I was like, man, this guy is so loyal.
Yeah,
like,
everybody needs a homie like him.
And at this point in the movie now, Hidatora has completely lost his mind. He's alone in the field, screaming like a madman. He's getting rained on. The jester and Tongo need to get him somewhere, and we come across a small hut that happens to be occupied by one of his victims.
Yep.
And it's life slapping him back in the face.
It's the brother of Lady Sue or Lady Sue.
Yeah.
And then you get this horrible story about how he personally had his eyes gouged out.
Yeah.
Hidatora was responsible for what's his name? Surumaru
Suramaru,
or
I
something?
think. Yeah.
And he just kind of lives as this outcast in this hut, and he plays his flute, which he's really good at.
Yeah, Flutie Boy.
Flute Boy, yeah.
Reminded me very much of Alien Covenant. Like Michael Fassbender playing the flute with himself. One of the weirdest scenes I've ever seen.
Yeah, for real. But yeah, it's just another like I am a fucking asshole. Like it's just another like you said slap in the face.
The point that you had brought up earlier of should you feel bad for somebody like this after you see this chaos go down. Which, not to get sidetracked here, but when you'd first seen this movie, I don't know if you had known that Ron like kind of means chaos.
I did know that, yes.
But you had told me you're like that scene is like the embodiment of chaos.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, so it's like that. That is why this movie is called that, because of that war scene. But moving on from that,
Flute Boy.
Yeah, Flute Boy. You're like, should I feel bad for Hidatora? Like I just seen the worst thing happen to him, and then you hear this story, and you're like. No, never mind.
Maybe,
like,
no,
you burned down this guy's castle. You killed the parents. You gouged this kid's eyes out when he was a little boy.
With your fucking hands, like.
And now you're having to sit face to face with him, and you've been humbled by what just happened to you.
And he gets freaked out. And he kind of busts out of the hut and falls over, and it's just like, how much more can he take? I don't know. Like we don't know.
Yeah, this is a guy who's at the end of his rope at this point.
Yeah,
like He's completely regretted his entire life now.
And so they're basically kind of like, well, what options do we have? And it basically kind of comes to, well, Samburo. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So Tongo kind of brings up the fact that, well, you still have this son out there that warned you of all this, and maybe it's kind of time that we
But even the mention of his name causes him to go insane.
Because he can't come to grips with the fact that he is responsible for all of this.
That's pride. It's so wrong.
It is pride.
Yes.
That's
a good point.
Total pride. But yeah, because they like that's where this movie's gonna lead. But it's the fact that can he make it there? Can he do this?
That's a great point.
Can he make a right to so many of these wrongs? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
and you get the classic it's weird to call him the hero, but you get like the classic trope of being stranded. You know what I mean? And like having to think about like, what should I do? Where do I go? And for the rest, not the rest of the movie, but a good part of the second act is him just being lost and alone in the
aimlessly
world.
wandering.
Yeah,
and
like a ghost. Go ahead, bro.
I'm gonna think a good point of what you said of that. Like, can he make it there? And I ultimately think that's the reason. I don't think he can, which is the reason why they end up coming to him. Because I don't think I don't think he was ever gonna make that trip, and it was needed. His son knew for him to like survive. He had to seek him out, and again, just shows loyalty to the extent be like his son loves him so much, knowing be like. I was telling you you're gonna commit a mistake. You committed the mistake, but I'm not gonna take advantage or make you feel like shit because of that.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to bring up is let's kind of revert from Hidetori and go back to Jiro and Lady Kaede because they are now. This is another subplot we have going on throughout the movie that really pushes it the rest of the way through.
It does.
Jiro has to present himself to Lady Kaede, who is now she's a widow, obviously, and he has to tell her the news of what happened to his brother. She doesn't buy it for a second that it was a mistake or anything like that. She understands. She's smart enough to understand that this was like
seen
an
how
action.
These people work. Yeah.
Yes, she knows exactly how ruthless they are because she's felt it herself. We get this really nasty detail that she's like, "Where's my husband's body?" And he was like, "It was too hot. We had to. It was unpresentable. Like that's how."
So we torched it.
Yeah, so we torched it right there, and we gave him a proper, funeral with the ceremony and all that. But that image, especially when you've just seen the war go down, and then you think about like the body rotting,
the sweltering
like,
heat and bodies.
Yeah,
dude, yeah. Jesus.
So Lady Kaede is obviously very upset, or at least she comes across that way in front of the general audience.
From her point of view, she's just lost power.
Yes.
So,
but she hasn't really. This is where we
wants more power. Exactly.
Yes. So she threatens Jiro. She pulls out. She closes all the doors. And she like
crazy.
Yeah, this scene is awesome. Go ahead.
There's a point in the story where Jiro admits to wanting to have her as his wife, right? But he's like, that's my brother's wife. Right before they fight, does that happen?
That's a little later on, and it's more the other way around. She pushes it more than anything else, because so what happens is she confronts him that this is bullshit. She pulls a knife on him, and she tells him, love
this scene.
Yeah, she tells him like, "I'm not. This is my castle. I grew up here. You guys took over, and I'm not leaving this place. And you were not gonna cast me to the side.
Yep.
You know what I mean?" And she cuts him twice on his neck.
Sucks the blood.
Sucks the blood out, right? But before we get to that, she shows him like just how like crazy she is. She pulls her robe like out and she starts like stabbing him like crazy. Like this could be you.
She just cuts her fucking clothes up.
Yeah. And then in a weird turn, very Shakespearean turn, she starts hooking up with Jiro.
And then she basically says, she's like, "Go kill your wife and you're gonna be mine.
I want her head."
Yeah. Like, go kill Lady Sue, and then you'll become my husband.
This is where the jokes when I was watching it when my stuff started rolling, because I was like, "Damn, he got down like that." Like, she's psycho after one day, one hit.
Yeah,
she was like, "Go kill your wife." No, I can't even fathom the idea of you doing this to somebody else and be like, "Damn, you're the hookup." Like, I have a wife.
This is where we get Kurogane again, because he is sent on a mission to go retrieve her head, cut it off, and bring it back. He comes back with the statue of a fox head, and he starts playing the fool. He's like, "What the hell?"
She's like, "Oh, she must have turned into she turned into a fox, and then the fox head turned into a stone."
Yeah, he was like, "This is very common. It's happened in China. It happens in Japan. It happens all over Asia. You know, sometimes foxes just turn into people, play little silly games like that." Lady Kaede doesn't buy it for a second, and then she kind of storms off angrily and like, this isn't the last you're gonna see of me.
Yeah.
And it sets up this subplot between Kurogane and Lady Kaede that who's gonna have Jiro's ear. You know what I mean? Like, Kurogane tells him multiple times throughout the movie, like, "I serve you and I serve the kingdom. I do not serve her and her plotting and scheming and all
because
of that."
He can tell, he's like, she's doing something. Like, she has some ulterior motive that we're not aware of. Yes. Like, he can tell, but,
Okay. let's kind of like fire through this back half
Yeah.
because I want to get to talking about the next war scene again.
Yeah.
So come on, it's the best part of the movie. These are the best parts. But so we have Hidatore just more wandering.
My favorite part of like this part where he's wandering, he's like laying under some rocks, and the jester is like trying to get him out. He's like, "How dare you remove me from my grave?"
yeah.
You
I
know?
like the stupid little hat
That's
that
what I was
they
gonna
give him.
say.
That's like,
Yeah.
it's like, hey, it's your helmet. And then like Tonga's like, come on, are
He's
you
like,
serious?
and she's like, "Yeah." She's like, "Maybe this isn't right."
Okay, just throws it away. Yeah. But it's like the jester taking it too far.
But
Like
that
this man
shot,
is already defeated.
It's so good. He looks like he's like the Ice King from Adventure Time.
Yeah.
Like, he looks like he's frozen at that point. And it's just such an interesting, like, different juxtaposition because it's just like flowers and spring in the back, and then there's just like frozen man.
rotting
You know
man.
what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, so good.
Definitely. So let's push the plot along. Let's try to get to the end of this plot so we can just talk about more general stuff. So basically, there's going to be a fight now between Saburo's army and Jiro's army, and then the other two warlords show up to kind of measure what's going on.
Yeah.
They're watching from a distance very carefully.
Like Saburo wants to go get his father, and then Jiro's like, "Well, you're gonna have to go through my army to go get him." Basically,
Yes.
So that sets up.
They're really
a
worried
battle.
about the fact that that it makes them look weak to just let him retrieve the father.
Exactly.
You know. And then we just get another awesome war scene.
Fucking awesome.
Yeah,
so
just-
many horses, so many extras. Like I said, the choreography.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Back to the gun thing about it being like a symbol for mass destruction is we see Jiro's army attack and Saburo's army just literally blow them off their fucking horses.
They're like,
you know what I
they're
mean?
like, they were like the Americans in the Revolutionary War, like the guerrilla warriors, like hiding out in the forest, like just sniping
Definitely.
people.
That's what it gives them direction to retreat back to the forest so they could hide within the trees and just bang, bang, bang.
Blast
pick
the
'em off.
fools. It's smart.
Yeah.
It's really smart.
And Jiro attempts to retreat until he learns out that Lord Ayabe has just taken over the first castle. They were like, "Oh, dude, they're fighting. They're gonna kill themselves
We'll
off.
go
Let's just
take
go take
this."
over."
Yeah. Goes back to the beginning, like the look that he had in like the opening scene where he's just like, I think
Yeah.
I'm gonna do something.
Yeah,
you know?
definitely.
Just waiting for his moment to strike.
This scene is definitely not as good as the other war scene because that one is just like perfect cinema. But this one is very good as well. And during the war or during that fight scene, the last one, Saburo takes off to go find Hidatora, and that's
does.
where he's like, "Don't pull me out of my grave."
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, and we get this horrible image of Saburo and Hidatora like finally confiding in each other again, and they have this little moment where Hidatora tells them like, "When we're alone, I want to have a father like to son speech, and like I have so much to like apologize for," because he realizes how wrong he is. Like when Saburo first gets there, he refuses to look at him. He's like literally putting his head in the sand.
Right.
He's like, "I have no words for you, and I don't want you to see my face. Like that's how embarrassed I am."
And then you see him, he almost starts to come back to life. And
Yep.
he's like, "You know what? I do have a lot to say to you, and I do need to make this right." He's like, it's almost like I can do something right.
This is like the first moment he snaps back into reality.
Exactly.
Finally.
From the past like hour and 15
I
minutes
think
that
he
we've
even
seen.
says like, "I don't care what happens. I just want to be with you."
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
You get another horrible moment of
Jesus
Saburo just being
Christ.
straight sniped.
yeah, there just gets you don't even see who shot him.
No.
It's an unnamed, unseen person just snipes him. And I think that
From the grassy knoll.
it's really exactly. I think it's really interesting that like when you brought up the fact that Kurosawa is like using guns as like like a nuclear type weapon that anybody can just use and destroy people.
Instant.
How fitting is it that you have this almost anticlimactic ending where he just gets shot by somebody and we don't even know?
Very uncut gems.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, for real.
What?
The Safdie brothers did this?
Yeah. So Saburo dies right there, right on the ground on the side of this active volcano.
Yeah.
How fucking cool, right? But Hidatora just passes away from grief, like right there.
He dies of sadness, basically.
Yeah, which is like
What?
It's a very fitting ending to
Yeah,
this movie,
it
you know.
is.
But we're not necessarily at the end yet because we have to see how it's going to play out with Jiro and Lady Kaide and Kurogane.
Yep.
Yeah, so the Hidatora storyline is done. I don't know if that felt rushed the way we talked about it at the end, but there's just so much to get through, and this episode is getting very long.
This is where the line that I wanted to
Yeah,
to
this
bring up is from, just because right before we go past it, and it's because obviously they're talking after the jester
Yeah.
is talking with.
I think I know what you're gonna say. Go ahead.
And she just obviously thinks it's very unfair. I feel like the gods think this is good to like. They find this entertaining, but then what's I keep forgetting his name.
Tongo.
Tongo says, "Wait, Tongo? That's his."
that's
That's a certain.
okay. I don't want to take over your
Yeah.
point, but I think what you're trying to talk about is how she's like crying that Hidetori is dead, and she's like, the gods are cruel, like they're watching us laughing, and then Tango tells her like, no, the gods are crying.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the line is, it is the gods who weep. They see us killing each other over and over since time began. They can't save us from ourselves. It is how the world is made. Men prefer sorrow over joy, suffering over peace.
Yeah.
It's just such a fitting to what this movie really is, what it's about.
Yeah, this is a perfect blend of a movie being deep and very entertaining as
Right,
well.
it
Which is
is.
why I think so many people like Scorsese and Spielberg and Coppola, like that's why we got some of these movies that are so great. And like the best movies are entertaining and have
they're
something
both.
to say.
Yeah.
You know? Those are ones that are crowd pleasers, you know, like give us a good message and then give us some badass
Yeah,
stuff.
do
to
some
just
cool
enjoy.
shit. Like
Yeah,
this is a movie.
definitely.
Like I want to have some fun.
So let's tie up the storyline with Kaide and Jiro and Kurogane and the new lords of the castle,
Yep.
right? Lady Kaide finally gets what's coming to her, right? Kurogane's like, I'm done playing games,
Yeah, it's like,
right?
what the fuck is this all about?
Yeah. And oh well, before we get to that, Lady Sue is her head is finally brought to Jiro.
Yes.
And Kurogane's the
'Cause
first one to see it.
She had gone back to go get the flute for Flute Boy, her brother. So, and then after that, we had never seen her. It's kind of like, well, where is she? Well,
Then we get this awful shot of her and the like maid or servant laying on the ground, and Lady Sue's head is cut off, but it's covered by grass. Like they
yeah.
kind of hide the graphicness of it. But this is finally happening. And like Kurogane's pissed off.
fuck yeah.
Yeah, like I don't know if I had missed why he has maybe he has a connection to her, or I just think it's like
Well, I think it's more of like a why the fuck do you get to dictate what goes on?
Yes.
Like you don't matter.
Yeah.
So why are people doing your bidding kind of thing?
yeah,
how I
that's
took
probably
it.
why
But-
what is going on. But he's finally had it at this moment. He storms up the castle. He finds Lady Kaide, who finally admits, like, this is exactly what I've been planning, and it's gone down exactly how I wanted to, because I wanted Hidetori and the Ichimonjis to suffer for what they did to my family.
She's like, they fucked my family up. I wanted them to fall apart too. And she perfectly orchestrated everything she needed to.
And one of the coolest, nastiest scenes in movie history happens. Kurogane's like, doesn't say shit, pulls out his sword, slices her head off, and you get a giant spray of the vibrant red
Like
blood.
gallons, like all over the wall simultaneously. Like I know you said, Ro, that scene is just,
I know. That's
it's just crazy.
you know how I make the little edits for like the page and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
that was going on
Heavily
there,
thinking
right?
about like, is this okay to put on there? So I'd be like,
Do we get
it's
flagged?
So good.
I don't care.
Because
Let's do it.
It's
and
graffiti.
even the angle, you get it through a doorway and just a sheath, and then one just stroke movement off of the case, just straight to her neck, blood on the floor, and that's like, my God, Akira Kurosawa.
Yeah, this is what I mean about the entertainment factor. You know,
Yeah.
it's like it's one last like gut punch right before the movie ends, and then Kurogane turns to Lord Jiro and he tells him like, "Prepare to die. Like we're going downstairs to die right now." And then we get the ending of the movie finally, where like they have to surrender. All of the Ichimonjis are dead now.
Everybody
the whole
is.
family is crumbled, and we get one last shot of Flute Boy.
Flute Boy, yeah.
And he's holding on to a scroll of the Buddha,
Buddha.
that Lady Sue had left with him. Like, this will protect you. Which is very symbolic and poetic. Like, it falls down. You know what I mean?
drops
And
it, he loses Buddha.
And it's one of the last shots we see is like the shot of the Buddha just... I mean, I get what they're trying to say with that point. You know, it's just like the gods watching. You know what I mean?
or
But
God is lost almost.
yeah, exactly. It's like the loss of God. It's like, oh, is God forsaken? It's like, God does not exist.
God is
Yeah,
not- God is not
God
here.
is not here. Not in this situation.
And we get a final shot of Flute Boy
It's
in a beautiful
pans out. And
background.
He's basically stuck because he's blind. This is the guy that got his eyes gouged out. He's stuck on the edge of this cliff with nobody around, just left waiting.
Yeah,
Like,
it's a very
terrible
it's a very sad ending to a
Beautiful
movie.
shot, but it's so sad. This movie is
And this concludes our breakdown of the movie.
of Ron.
Yeah,
Jesus, dude, I want to watch it again right
I
now.
know. Is there any like fun facts or anything like that you want to bring up just about the production in general before we wrap this?
I
up?
do want to say just to, I guess because we didn't talk about it in the beginning, this movie is 3 hours, or it's like 2:45,
2:40
right?
something?
Yeah, 2:40. But obviously we tried. That's why this one's probably longer than the rest too. We loved this movie. We're trying to run through it. There's so many epic scenes to try to pick ones to try for you guys to get entertained and want to watch it is very hard, but yeah, the movie obviously is slow burning for a good amount of the scenes which I think is very crucial because we build up this relationships with so many of the characters that are present here.
Yep. You basically get every hour you get a payoff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like transactional.
Yeah. Okay. You ate your vegetables, and then let me get you some dessert.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But I mean, what I really want to say about this movie, I mean, besides the fact that, I mean, obviously it's phenomenal, like really one of the best movies ever made, probably that I've seen at least. But I just think that this movie really is just kind of taken to the next level because of the state that he was in when he made this movie. Mm-hmm. Like he was very depressed and he was suicidal at this point.
Yes.
And this is a very direct reflection and almost like, it's almost one of the most like realistic interpretations of depression that I've ever seen. Like the thought of just wandering aimlessly by yourself, just aging and just being alone. Like it's just crazy. And the fact that he also lost his wife.
Yeah, they halted production for one day. Yeah.
So like just the ability to take all that sorrow and sadness and those ideas and translate it into a movie that shows this, but also is beautiful. Like it's just very impressive. I'm a big fan of this movie and I highly recommend it to everybody.
It's like regarded as his last
Epic
kiss, like the masterpiece to like let the world know this is what Akira Kurosawa is. And like you guys said before, for it to be in color, it is almost like very touching the way that it came about. It's a masterpiece.
This was at the time, the most expensive Japanese movie ever made.
$11 million.
Yeah. Talk about nowadays, like,
dude, like you wouldn't. I don't know. You probably wouldn't have been able to make this movie for $11 million now.
No,
Definitely
no.
not.
hundreds.
Yeah, hundreds, and then it would bomb like The Last Duel.
Exactly.
One thing I did want to say is that at this point in his life, Akira Kurosawa was basically blind when he made this movie, and that is one of the he had been like. It was like a 10-year thing. Like, it's not like he had just become blind. Like, he had already been losing his vision for like the past 10 years. And that was one of the reasons he painted these, was because he was able to see it, like, because it was so close to him. Mm-hmm. So that's how he really came up with this vision. You know what I mean? And like I told you guys, I was like, Akira Kurosawa at 75 and blind is doing something that 100 directors combined could not do. Yeah. You know what I mean? And like the way that they must have worked as a team to make this come to life.
Yeah.
And to bring his vision to life, just like what we were talking about with Macbeth. Like, you could tell this team was
working
together
hand in
on
hand.
this. Yeah. There's just, yeah.
There's like a million things
There's a million things I want to say.
But
this gets done because I think he is Hidatora.
Yeah.
And everybody
that's
else.
What he said.
Everybody else is, we listen to you, master. We will do what you want to do. And I think this is his last showing of, I have that power, so I'm going to try to gift the world the best that I can with that power.
Yeah, he said himself that this is one of his most personal movies, like as a reflection of himself and his life, and
I think that's probably why it hits so damn hard.
Yeah, definitely. You know, definitely. You guys ready to wrap this up?
Yeah, I think that's all I got to say about this one.
I'm pooped.
I am too. Damn, what a fucking movie! Please see this movie, like for real. Like this really is one of the best pieces of art I've ever
seen.
Art,
it feels like it transcends movies, and it's just art.
This is art. So go see this shit.
Definitely watch.
It's incredible.
Ron. Oh, you know what? Sorry, one last thing I wanted to bring up is that his previous movie was Kagemusha, which is considered a masterpiece in its own right, and it was considered a dress rehearsal for Ron. Like, let me work out some of these ideas. That was his first samurai movie in color, right? Like, let me work out some of these ideas, see what I can really do, like, in this zone, and then to create this, his last epic, his last kiss to the world.
I think you guys bringing up so much sorrowness in his heart is what differentiates Kagemusha to this. I think, obviously I haven't seen Kagemusha yet, but I think the emotional scenes they were talking about, Hidatori like losing his mind, all comes from him feeling that same way. And in Kagemusha is just flexing what you can do in color.
Is it
more of a samurai film, you know?
Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning into the episode. Like and subscribe if you're on YouTube. Leave a comment. If you do watch this, DM us at the Grand Cinema Hotel on Instagram. I'd love to hear what people think about this. I definitely think if you watch this movie, you are going to be inspired.
Yeah, I do too.
And this isn't my original thought, but I definitely agree with this, that if you're someone who is just now getting into international film or just film on a deeper level in general, this is where you should probably start. Yeah. You might get it might spoil everything else after this, but Akira Kurosawa is one of the greatest filmmakers of all time. Just give this a shot,
Yeah,
even if it
give 'em a
doesn't
look.
seem like it's really something you would go for.
Also, if you're a listener, this is not the only Kurosawa movie we'll probably be doing. So you probably
Yeah.
get used to it.
Yeah, definitely. Get used to it because
Kurosawa
I
months.
definitely want to tackle some of these masters, you know, and it's all love. So I'm not really here to tell you like, oh, this movie could have been better. You know what I mean? Like
no, this was a perfect movie. What do you rate this movie?
5.
5.
Five.
Yeah.
Or
Okay.
10.
Yeah.
You can give it a 10. Yeah, you do it.
500,
10
like
out of
whatever.
5.
3 thumbs up.
I have no
Highly
complaints.
recommend.
I think there's certain movies that just transcend you trying to be like, well, I didn't like in this story. Be like, this.
Shut the
you get
fuck
shut the
up.
fuck up about this story. You know what I mean? Be like, there's just certain movies that there's a clear, bigger themes and message that's being portrayed here, and be like, you're lucky to have this be made for your eyes to even witness.
Damn right, peasants.
Definitely. Definitely. I would normally say let us know your opinion, but if you don't like this movie, I don't care. And you're wrong. That's my
Go to the
opinion.
doctor.
You know?
Go see a doctor.
Yeah. All right, guys.
All right, y'all.
Thanks for checking in. We're checking out Akira Kurosawa's Ron. Hell yeah.
Hell fucking yeah.
All right, guys.
Bye.
See you later.
Later, y'all.